everyone can hear me. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to go over a few housekeeping issues before we get started. So first, if you have any questions, we have reserved the last 20 minutes for question and answers. Please feel free to type in your question into the Zoom group chat and I will read them out loud and we can discuss. I think that'll be the easiest. We'll start with the dua, we'll talk about AMWPA and then dive into the panel discussion. I hope everyone enjoys it. For those of you who are tuning in later or perhaps can't make it, this will be on YouTube, I'm told, and so you can listen to this later. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر. Oh Allah, what blessing I or any of your creation have risen upon is from you alone without any partner. So for you is all praise and unto you is all thanks. So my name is Tasneem Ahmed. I'm actually a gastroenterologist. I'm a local Texan. I grew up in Houston. I went to college at UT Austin undergrad. I majored in biochemistry, which is a discussion for a later time. I went to medical school at UNT/TCOM in Fort Worth, and then I did my residency and fellowship at Cleveland Clinic. And I started my first job out of fellowship back in 2010 at UT Southwestern. I was on faculty there for 9.5 years, heavily involved in medical school and fellowship education, clinical research, clinical trials, and recently shifted gears to start work in the private sector at THR in Fort Worth. And so we can talk about that if anyone has questions later on. So that's a little bit about me. I wanted to tell you about AMWPA. So AMWPA stands for American Muslim Women's Physician Association. This is a nonprofit professional organization of physicians, dentists, allied health professionals, basically anyone who is interested in health, welfare, and education of the community. The goal of AMWPA is preventative healthcare, education, and giving back to the community. I do want to highlight several of the accomplishments of AMWPA because I'm very proud of this organization. They've organized at least 50 health fairs throughout the DFW, has served just under 5,000 patients. They are very involved with the leadership in DFW, with mayors and city council members coming to health fairs, coming to our dinners. They're heavily involved in education. They sponsor CPR classes, have trained 120 people so far with CPR, and have donated defibrillators throughout the mosques around the community. They're involved in education in terms of we give a number of merit awards to undergrad students, allied health professionals, medical and dental students. We sponsor stethoscopes to TCOM. We work with the Texas Medical Association in awards. We are heavily involved in donations with the North Texas and Tarrant County Food Bank. I'm, alhamdulillah, super proud that I believe over the past 3 years, the AMWPA members have donated roughly $20,000 every Ramadan. That is a huge accomplishment. And more recently with this COVID pandemic, a lot of our undergrad students and teenagers and members have really stepped up to donate masks and continue educational classes throughout the year. So you're going to ask, what is the goal of this panel discussion? How did this come about? And this, just to give you some background so you can understand the context of these discussions, female physicians make up about 48% of the physician community. And interestingly, when I was looking at this, the numbers really haven't changed over the past 50 years. If anything, it's gone up maybe about 3 to 5%. But I think what we all know is that women in the workforce haven't really been studied very well in general and in medicine specifically. And you'll see that the number of female applicants in medical schools are continuing to rise. And I think right now it's about 50-50. And I don't think we really have a good understanding and appreciation of the effect of women in medicine, and more importantly, Muslim women in medicine. And I think part of that is there's this older cohort of largely male physicians who really kind of take the forefront. And so I wanted to highlight this concept of professional socialization. And what that means is, as physicians, we go through this long, intense process of gaining knowledge. And it starts with, honestly, high school, college, and then we go to medical school, and then we do residency, we do fellowship, and some of us have done super fellowships. And we're gaining knowledge and values, and we're sort of trying to get this set of norms for our occupation and develop a value set. And this is what contributes to how different our practice styles are among women, and how different our practice styles are, I think, as Muslim women. And I think that that's not really well understood or promoted or seen. And I wanted to start a series of panel discussions highlighting different women in medicine, different specialties, and the different journeys that we've all taken. And I think before we tackle some of these harder issues, I think we should first have discussions so that we can all learn from each other. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce our 4 panelists. We have Dr. Rani Siddiqui. She is a pediatrician. We have Dr. Sadaf Khan, who's a nephrologist. We have Dr. Mariam Rezi, who is an internist, and we have Dr. Ursula Islam, who is a surgeon, a vascular surgeon, a bariatric surgeon, as well as a general surgeon. So I'm going to first start with Dr. Rani Siddiqui, and Rani, I'm going to go ahead and, or do you want to unmute yourself? Perfect. Tell me about, so Rani, Dr. Siddiqui went to UMKC, and for those of us who don't know, that's University of Missouri at Kansas City. It's a very well-ranked 6-year medical school program where students matriculate right after high school, and they have the option to do 6 years. They can also extend to 7 to 8 years. It's a highly competitive program. So Rani did that, and then she went on to do her pediatric residency at St. Louis University Children's Hospital. And so I want you to tell us, Rani, can you share with us about your experiences?
Sure, absolutely. Assalamu alaikum, Tasneem, and the rest of the panel. Thanks for having me. So yes, I was fortunate. I lived in Missouri at the time. So I was born in Kansas City, raised in St. Louis, and kind of toggled back and forth between the 2 cities until finishing residency. So because I was a Missouri resident, I had the pleasure, or the luxury rather, of being an in-state resident to apply to the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I chose that program because it was a 6-year program straight out of high school. And, you know, they accepted me based on my merit, my accomplishments during the high school time. So I pursued that 6-year program, finished it, and did my residency, like you said, in St. Louis, with St. Louis University, Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. So I can talk a little bit, I guess, about, you know, I can't really speak to a traditional medical school because I didn't really do the 4-year undergrad and the 4-year medical school. So I can tell you a handful of the pros and some of the cons of doing the 6-year program. Some of the pros were, because I was set on doing medicine, I had a pretty early idea that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have to sort of soul search, or, you know, do my undergrad college years and try to figure out what I was going to do. I was already in a, you know, one track. So the way that the program was structured is the first 2 years were primarily sort of the undergrad, if you will. So, you know, it was mostly fulfilling the requirements for the BA. So it was a combined BA, MD that I received at the end of those 6 years. So the first 2 years were really geared on finishing my BA requirements. The last 4 years were quite clinical to finish out the MD requirements. So what that really looked like is during even those BA course requirements, we still shadowed a physician. So we had, you know, once a week shadowing of a private practice physician, and, you know, doing rounds in hospital, you know, seeing patients, et cetera, with that physician while doing our undergrad classes. When those first 2 years were finished, we moved over to the medical campus, which is primarily really the medical school and the hospital that was affiliated with it, which is Truman Medical Center. That's when the real clinical work began. It was, you know, sort of 2 months of medicine rotation every year. So by the time I finished my total 6 years of the school, I had done 8 months of a medicine rotation, 2 months of a surgery rotation, 2 months of an OBGYN rotation, et cetera. And so, the different subspecialties were sort of broken down. We had electives that we could do, same as most medical schools, that, we could choose our electives. At the same time, we sort of, if you will, had crash course classes that other folks would spend a full semester on. For example, our pharmacology class was 1 month, which normally that's pretty much a sink or swim class in a lot of programs, a killer class. And I will say, so the pros were that it was a very abridged, program. We got to shrink down a lot of things in a small amount of time. The cons, I will say, is we didn't really have a life. We didn't have, after the first year or two, we didn't have, actually after the first 2 years, we didn't have a summer break. Our breaks, we didn't have a traditional winter break and a summer break and the spring break. If you were on your surgery rotation in March, there was no such thing as spring break. If you were, doing your clinical rotations, which we were pretty much all year round, we were very condensed with the time that we had in those total of 6 years to finish out all those requirements. So the cons, would be that that's all you live, sleep, breathe, and do. I will say, I had fun doing it because all of your peers were doing it at the same time. So that was the nice part of it. We did have sort of a handful of people in our classes that were not in the traditional 6-year program. So we did have a little bit of a variety of people with different backgrounds. So that was kind of nice to learn from, that folks that had, had an EMT background or been in nursing school and then decided to join in for medical school. So they have a very small percentage of slots that they'll actually accept folks in for a kind of a traditional 4-year medical school. But the majority of my class of 100 was the 6-year program kids, basically, that came straight out of high school at 17, 18 years old that were on their way to get an MD. So by the time I graduated medical school, I had an MD at age 23, which was a little bit surreal. And then because I chose pediatrics, it was a little bit of a pun on my field because they literally called me the baby doc. But truly, I finished residency at 26. So that was really a huge pro. If that's what you're going to do, then.
And you saved money, right? You saved 2 years of tuition.
Absolutely. You do save 2 years of tuition. So to all our Texas audience out here, unfortunately, now you are no longer in-state residents. So you actually pay double the tuition at UMKC. And there are a handful of programs around the country that do, that have a similar program, like Northwestern in Chicago has, I believe, a 7-year program. Howard University has a 6-year program. And the other major advantage I do want to mention is that I did not have to take my MCAT. So because I was already directly enrolled into the 6-year program, I did not have to re-interview for medical school, reapply for anything, nor take my MCAT. I was already on the one-track, program to finish.
Ronnie, let me ask you this. So I've heard great things about UMKC. I've actually had family members go to UMKC and they loved it. And I think now, especially, I feel like education is outrageously expensive, right? No matter where you go. And so the finances definitely plays into this. But tell me, did you feel well prepared for residency, both emotionally, mentally, because it's grueling, 6 years of nonstop education?
That's a great question. So educationally and academically, I felt way more prepared than my residency class, because we were so heavily clinical. I don't believe that the other medical schools dive deep so much into clinical rotations. I may as well have finished a first year of residency by the time I finished medical school. And my first years, actually my residency felt like a breeze, really. I'll say my 3 years of residency felt much easier than my 4 years the 4 last years of at UMKC.
Awesome.
And I had another fellow student also do my program with me, and she and I both felt the same. So out of my class of 20 in my residency class, we were probably far more advanced clinically than the rest of the class, which was fantastic. Now, emotionally, I think women mature a little bit more than males. And so I had noted that there were, we had a little bit of a rate of attrition. We would lose probably about 10% of our class in the first year and maybe another 5 to 10% after that. So my original class of 100, by the time we graduated, was more in the 70s, high 70s. 70s, because they either needed extra time to finish those programs, things that classes like anatomy and pharmacology, et cetera, may have taken them longer than what was allotted. And so they might have finished in 7 years. Some of them just simply dropped out. They realized very early on this was not for them. But so emotionally, I felt fine. I felt very prepared because of just the experience I had already had at UMKC. But I know that wasn't 100% true for a lot, some of, I'll say it, some of the class.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we are going to move on to Dr. Khan. Dr. Sadaf Khan went to undergrad at Case Western and did a biomedical engineering degree. She then went on to Ohio State, go Buckeyes, for her MD degree. I have to say that because I was in Ohio for 7 years and I had never heard of a Buckeye as a Texan. And then went on to Cleveland Clinic for internal medicine residency, and then went on to Northwestern for nephrology fellowships. So Sadaf, your path is a bit different, and I feel like it's rather the traditional path that most of us take in the US. So tell me about college, briefly. Biomedical engineering, was that helpful in retrospect? Do you feel like it was maybe a bit too intense? Tell me about Ohio State. That's a pretty massive medical school, and then getting into a very competitive residency.
Yeah, so I think I did look at pre-med combined programs when I was also going to looking at colleges at that time. And, they're very competitive programs. There's less programs. There's one actually in Ohio in the Akron area. I ended up choosing Case Western. I was in Cleveland. I would be local there. So I think that was one of the reasons I grew up in Cleveland. As far as major, looking back, I think biomedical engineering is a pretty intense major. It's a lot of engineering classes. And I basically liked problem solving and just having more of that math background and problem solving background. Interestingly, about 1/3 of the class who did BME went on to do med school. 1/3 went on to do graduate school, and then I think 1/3 went on in as far as industry. Looking back, I think at that point I wasn't sure, as far as I knew I wanted to do medicine, but I also wanted to have a backup career that I would enjoy if I didn't get into med school. So I think it was kind of like a backup plan at that point, as well as some of the, they had basically kind of promoted it as another path to going on to medical college, that you would have some background as far as engineering. I don't think I've actually really applied that knowledge per se in the clinical sector at this point. The disadvantage, I would say, is that since you have so many more courses that are required from the engineering side of things, you don't really get to do a lot of the pre-med classes that people traditionally do, such as, anatomy. Sometimes people will take like anatomy in undergrad. So a lot of those classes I ended up having to do when I went to med school. And I think it would be helpful if you have time in your schedule to do some things which you do a little bit more in depth in med school, such as anatomy, earlier on during the undergrad time. So I guess next, the reason that I did choose Ohio State as far as a medical college, again, being in state, being close to home. It is also a pretty large academic center, multiple departments, a lot of opportunities as far as what you're interested in as a student to kind of explore. The first 2 years are heavily classroom based, and going over, as far as initially we started off with a block for anatomy, and then we did an organ-based, basically a curriculum where if for each block, for each organ-based system, we would go through the physiology, would go through the pathophysiology, the pathology. I think that's traditionally, and then it was more of a problem-based as well. So we had some lectures, and then we had smaller group problem-based groups that we would do more learning clinical skills, as well as like problem solving. And then our last 2 years was more clinical in the hospital, in the clinic setting. The first year, everyone had a pretty much a similar schedule where we rotated through, all the different subspecialties: family medicine, OBGYN, pediatrics, medicine, surgery. The fourth year, we did have more time as far as elective time, depending on what someone was interested in going into. They could do additional electives in those, as well as some time off that we had for interviewing for residency at that point. The reason I chose to go into medicine, I think I enjoy working with patients. There was a wide scope as far as subspecialties that I ended up really liking when I was in my medical college.
Tell us about being a nephrologist.
So
what is, for those of us who don't know, what is nephrology and what does that mean? Because, and you're right now at an academic center. So why academics versus private, and why not primary care? Why subspecialize?
So nephrology is focused on kidney. Basically, it's a physician that takes care of kidney problems, I guess would be the way. The reason I chose nephrology is that there's a lot of complexities in the patient population itself. You still get to take care of a lot of medicine things such as like hypertension. It's basically also a chronic illness. These patients are very complicated. The patients who have chronic kidney disease, majority of those patients have diabetes, hypertension. Sometimes they have other medical problems. So they're very complex patients, and you're able to take care of them, from when you get diagnosed with their disease process all the way through to even when they end up, sometimes if, they have kidney failure, and if they need dialysis, or if they need kidney transplant or other options. And then other than that, I think there's also other patients that we'll take care of that have like glomerulonephritis or other complicated immune mediated processes related to their kidneys. So it's, as far as like the patient population that you see, I was very interested in the pathology and the physiology, would help me choose it. There's also a procedural aspect to nephrology. Nephrologists are usually involved in temporary dialysis catheter line placements and kidney biopsies, dialysis, whether it's in the hospital setting, in the ICU setting with like continuous dialysis, or if it's an outpatient setting with hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis. So because I was basically really interested in the patient population.
Great.
As far as choosing academics versus private practice, I really didn't think about when I was going through training. I mean, I've enjoyed teaching. I've enjoyed, working with students. I mean, throughout residency and fellowship, it's basically a team approach. You have students with you, you have residents who you're working with. So there's a big focus on teaching. So I did enjoy that. Initially, I had looked at private practice as well when I was finishing up fellowship. I think one of the other deciding factors was lifestyle. The lifestyle of a private practice nephrologist is there's a big focus as far as trying to get more patients into your practice. A lot of people, have different dialysis clinics that they're going to. So I just wasn't really also interested in that type of a lifestyle. I think I was wanted to kind of focus at one place, not really have to worry about the business aspect of things, and kind of just take care of, focus on taking care of patients, focus on, improving quality of life for patients, and as well as being involved in teaching. So that's why the academic setting was a good fit for me. I've been at UT Southwestern for the past 5 years. We have a lot of students from the med school that rotate with us, the residents and the fellows that work with us. And then, so that was kind of the
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Khan. We are going to switch gears and talk to Dr. Ursula Islam. Dr. Islam went to medical school in Pakistan at King Edward Medical College. She then went on to UT Southwestern for residency, as well as minimally invasive and bariatric surgery, and then went on to Wake Forest for a vascular surgery. Ursula, correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I guess we don't have a lot of time. We have 2 more physicians left, so I'm going to be fast. So surgery is an excellent specialty for someone who wants to, not that everybody else is not doing that, but for me, it was like great because I could fix things and move on, and the patients are not going to start coming, and I don't have to visit with them every month or every few months. So it's great. I did do my med school in Pakistan, and when I came here, I wanted to do surgery, and I interviewed in probably 4 surgery programs. I applied to probably 70, and a lot of UT Southwestern was the only surgery program that actually called me for a preliminary interview. I had more options in other specialties, and they called me, and I did interview because I wasn't sure I was going to match. As a foreign grad, you don't know if you're going to waste 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years of your life getting into the specialty you want to go to. So anyways, I got the interview. It went okay. And I had 0 experience in the United States. Like I hadn't done any observership, I hadn't done anything. So it was almost like, I know but I actually just, wanted to do this, asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please help me. I want to do this. And yes, I got matched into a preliminary program at UT Southwestern. So when you match into a prelim program, so apart from that, I had excellent scores in my USMLE. It was really grueling to put out that score, but because I wanted to do surgery, I knew it was more competitive in terms of my 3-digit score on my step. So I think I worked extra hard on that too. Anyways, I matched into the prelim program, and over there, within the first few months, I had I put out 2 papers with mentors. UT Southwestern is an excellent place to learn and to just be in company of people who like to teach, and they're just excellent human beings. So I got in touch with 2 of my mentors who were excellent, and they helped me get into research. So post call, after 30 hours, I would not go home. I would stay in the library till 8 p.m. and then go home, because I wanted to take out that paper. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps when you want to do something. My in-training exam, I had no time to study, but in Pakistan, I had already done step 1, which is really a repetition of what they ask in training exam. So I also scored great in that. My residency program director told me that was the highest score he has seen in 10 years. So that also, I guess what I'm trying to highlight is, if you want to do something, go ahead with it. Like I was expecting, so a lot of female, I guess, audience in our group, I was expecting my second baby at that time. And I just, I think you just have to have an excellent spouse and help at home, which he was. And so that was my first year. And I asked my program director, I knew he liked me. I said, would you give me a letter for my second year in some other program? And he go, no, don't apply. So that was kind of a good thing. So I said, okay, so what do you mean? I'll get a second year spot next year. And he goes, we'll talk about it. And he would smile. He's a good guy, Jim Valentine. I don't know if you guys know. So he gave me a categorical spot. I did not waste any time. I did a 5-year training at UT Southwestern. I did my bariatric fellowship there. It's just 1-year fellowship. You learn how to do laparoscopic colons and laparoscopic bariatric surgeries. 1 year quick short fellowship. That was my 6th year. Then I stayed for 3 more years in academics. I loved it. I loved teaching resident, just like a lot of other physicians here in the group. I had an excellent time there. And then one day, I got a call from my sister-in-law, who's also a physician in Pakistan, and she said she had a relative who needed vascular help. So she said, you know what, Ursula, there are no vascular surgeons in Pakistan. And I said, well, are you sure? So I looked up and I started asking other people I knew, and there was not any that was trained in general vascular and endovascular. So physicians come from UK, England, and they are trained in open vascular, but they don't really get an endovascular experience. So I asked my program director, my ex-program director at that time, and Dr. Claggett, who was also my mentor in vascular surgery, and they supported my idea to proceed with a 2-year fellowship with vascular endovascular surgery. I went to Wake Forest. My husband resigned on his job. So what I'm trying to get to is that it is not just me. It is not just me. It's most of all, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we all know, and it's your spouse and your family. So my daughter at that time was 10, and I asked her, okay, so there's an opportunity, I can learn more, but I won't be home much, because the 30 hours at a stretch, and I didn't know it was actually more than that. Anyways, long story short, 2 years at Wake Forest University, I came out, I wanted to practice both. I wanted to practice general, bariatrics, and vascular, and there's no academic program that would take me on a job that defines all this. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped me with that decision. So I had to go on my own solo. So Wise County is about 45 minutes from Salt Lake, excellent place. Dr. Zuberi actually, I contacted him, nice guy, wonderful individual. And I said, well, I'm looking for a job. And so of course, you got to talk to people. So I'm a hospital employee, excellent lifestyle. Why? Because they have nurse practitioners. So I'm not at the bedside all the time. Now with vascular, of course, it's a little bit rough, because if I have a patient who has an ischemic limb and I'm dripping a TPA or thrombolytics in the leg, I have to stay around. I'd probably come home, take a shower, and go back. So that's kind of harsh. So, but I can pick and choose what I get. I don't take vascular call for my hospital. I do just take bariatric call, which is easier. And I do non-urgent vascular cases. So that's my deal. If you have any questions, we can talk about that later.
Mashallah, mashallah. I'm so impressed with everyone so far. Last but not least, we have Dr. Mariam Razi. She graduated from another excellent medical school in Pakistan, Dow. She went to University of Connecticut for intern year of medicine and then finished her medicine residency at St. Elizabeth Medical Center. And I'll have Dr. Razi talk about herself for the rest. She's had a very great career. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, yes. So Assalamualaikum, thank you so much. It's been wonderful listening to all these fantastic female physicians talk. And I want to share a part of my story. So I, like Dr. Islam, went to a foreign medical school, went to medical school in Pakistan, in Karachi. Moved here after I finished medical school, met my husband, moved here. We moved to Connecticut, where my husband is a physician too, is finishing his residency. So again, going through, the licensing exam that you have to take when you come as a foreign medical grad, it's a little stressful because you have to really plan and focus and take your USMLEs. But again, these are the same licensing exams that people don't know that medical school students who go to med school in the US take. And so it's very doable. You got to just make a plan and go through the process. It took me, I think, about 5 or 6 months to get all 3 portions done. And again, so I want to just highlight the fact that, when you're a physician and you're a female and you're a Muslim physician and female, our priorities have to line up with our life going on. So I could only apply to 6 programs because I wanted to stay close to where I was. And I applied to 6, 7 programs, all very good programs, match into University of Connecticut, which is a very good internal medicine program. I did my internship here, it went really well, really enjoyed the process. And what I really enjoyed about the residency is the fact that you're learning and you're getting paid, which is fantastic. And so finished my internship here. And as Tasneem mentioned, I had to move out. I had to apply for a 2nd-year spot at a different program. And the reason was my husband wanted to get his fellowship at Mass General, which is a very good program in Boston. And again, I had the option of staying back and finishing my 3 years where I was, or I could move with him. So I looked around for a 2nd-year spot, and I was very lucky. I found a 2nd-year math spot at New England Medical Center, which is a great program affiliated with St. Elizabeth. So I finished on my 2 years. Now, while going through the training, honestly, I kept thinking, because when you're in a competitive environment, everybody around you, as you're in Boston, they have the biggest medical institutions. They have Beth Israel, they have Brigham, they have Mass General, and all the friends around you are all applying to great residencies. And I would always keep on thinking, like, why doesn't anything appeal to me as much as internal medicine? Because I like to know a little bit of everything. So at the time of graduation, even though having a HEMONC fellowship honestly handed to me, I decided to just go with my gut feeling and just take internal medicine. I thought that was my natural calling. I love having the process of interacting with patients, spending more time and getting to know a little bit about their entire disease process and seeing the patient as a whole. And that was the reason why internal medicine was just supernatural to me. So we finished training, both of us at the same time, me and my husband, and he decided to take a job on the West Coast. We moved to California. So I have a little one in tow. And then I decided to look around for jobs, and there are many internal medicine physician positions, employee positions, but every place I would interview, I felt they would offer me the job, but in the end, it was like, your vacation would be a few days and you can only do this. And I felt like internal medicine is getting to be in a process where physicians are becoming, it's getting difficult to practice the medicine you want to do it the way you want to. So I decided to open up my own internal medicine solo practice with completely 0 patients in a very, very competitive part of town in Newport Beach. And I remember going, getting credentialed and going to a different hospital for, meeting other physicians and mingling, putting my name out there. And I remember this old surgeon who came up to me and said, how are you doing your own practice? Are you like independently wealthy? How can you pull it off? But that's what, I realized, like, if you're good and you really want to put in the effort and the time, which I did, anything you devote your time to, you can pull it off. And my practice started a little slow. It took 6 months to really pick up. And I would joke with my husband, the first 6 months I would be in the office, but end up going shopping a little bit more because I was close to a fantastic mall. But the practice took off, and it took off so wonderfully that I ran it for a whole 9 years in California and Orange County, super saturated with a lot of physicians. I was probably the only South Asian kind of background to running a solo practice in that neighborhood.
Were you
And
the
the
only
kind of patients that come through that door just by word of mouth with no marketing, if you put your heart and soul and you enjoy what you do, I think it translates into patient care. And I would have patients coming from all different walks of life and just referral. And it was amazing. So whole 9 years was beautiful, and I would do it in a heartbeat again. But 2 years ago, we decided to move to Texas to be close to family. So now we're in Dallas. And the last 2 years has been a very rewarding experience because I was very lucky to fall into a different position. So I'm one of the medical directors at the nonprofit organization, which is the Muslim Community Health Clinic, which is also called as a Shifa Clinic. So coming from a very prestigious, high affluential background of patients to a completely opposite spectrum has been mind-boggling. So it looks like sometimes I'm practicing medicine, honestly, in a very third world country setup where patients can come in from all walks of life, no insurances, and we provide them amazing medical care. We provide them all services within our umbrella and refer to a lot of physicians, and it's amazing. The network of physicians we've had established in our neighborhood. Everybody wants to offer time. We can refer them for very discounted prices. So it has been very rewarding. So I feel it was Allah's calling because, you come. So a part of me, to be honest, when I moved was a little sad because when you sell your practice, and honestly, when I sold my practice, it sold within a day. And I remember the physician who took it, I was very offended as they were taking my stuff because I'm like, this is a part of me. I built it. It's like a child. But I think, everything happens for a good reason. I was supposed to come to Shifa. I was supposed to take care of this underprivileged population, and they are the most humblest of people. So medicine in itself, I think, is such a beautiful journey. And anybody who gets into medicine gets in for the same intention of helping people. And if whatever specialty you choose, whatever path you take, I think you'll always be successful. Only if you are 100% committed, and patient care should, of course, be your first priority. Of course, you want to make money, you want to support your family, you want to be rewarded for your hard work, but I think it'll all come to you, but just keep your priorities straight and look at all the options. So ever since I moved here, I've not only just worked at the Shifa Clinic, I also work part-time at a physician review company, which is called Magellan. So I've learned a different whole skill set of how insurances work. And currently I'm actually doing a lot of PR and hospitalist work at like 4 different hospitals. So, life has been fantastic. I really can't complain. There is a lot of work out there. It depends on how much you want to do. And again, like Dr. Islam and all the other physicians mentioned, you need to have a supporting family member, a spouse, or have a lot of people around you who can support you through the process. Because as a physician, a female, a Muslim physician, or just a female physician, you are going to finish your work. When you come home, you have a whole other life waiting for you. Your kids are waiting for you. Food has to go on the table. You want to raise good kids with good values. You want to give them the religious values. So it's a task. But I think you can do it all if you just do it right. And just, stay focused and just keep going forward because I think it's a great privilege. People come to you, they unload all their problems onto you, and you can triage what's more important. Like for me, the biggest thing was all my patients trusted me to any specialist I would send them because I would tell them, you're like a family member. You're coming to my office, you're coming to my house. I don't want you to wait too long. I'm not going to send you to anyone who I wouldn't go to. So that in itself, raises the trust level. And so, it's fantastic. And medicine, as you know, even for internal medicine is growing. Now there's integrative medicine. A lot of people want to talk about holistic side of things. So having that background with holistics and integrative, you can incorporate it all So internal medicine, even though just being internal medicine, can grow to so many different things. You can grow your practice so many different ways if you just do it right. And of course, I think one thing I just want to point out when you start a solo practice, because we don't learn the business side of medicine in med school. That is a huge learning curve. And I think that just made me a smarter physician because I did it all under one roof and did it alone. So it's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Mariam. That was amazing. Mashallah, mashallah. I'm so proud to be in the company of all of these really well accomplished women. I don't think we have any questions, which is good because that means I can ask questions. Ronnie, can you tell us a little bit about your current setup as a pediatrician?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I'm working for a large private practice in Dallas. They have another office in Plano as well. I've got a lot of flexibility as all this panel, all the panel that we have. I'm also a mommy doc. So I've got 3 little people in the house that, are sort of I'll be honest with you, my full-time responsibility. And so I kind of do peds on the side. It's kind of how I always frame it, even for folks that ask. So I do currently work part-time, and that's sort of a loaded term because sometimes it becomes full-time and then some, and then sometimes it reverts right back to, part-time, just, the timing and the season and the patient load and the demand that's going on. But I love my job also because it allows me so much flexibility. I can work around my husband's schedule, my kids' schedule. I work evenings, weekends. I can work during the day. The office is really amazing. It's just, it's so big. We have over 20 providers so we can always flex around each other's schedules and, make it work. So currently that's what I'm doing. Before that, I was working in the emergency room at Children's. And I enjoyed that also because it was, you knew what you were getting into. You clock in, you clock out, it's shift work. And so that also was quite convenient. I did that really before I had my 3rd child. And once I had number 3, I just couldn't pull off, 6:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. p.m. to 3 a.m. shifts and then have a 3rd kid. And but again, I feel like my field, pediatrics, allowed me the flexibility to do that as well. I think it's amazing the opportunities we have as mothers and women and physicians with how much flexibility there is out there. I didn't really realize that. So when I chose pediatrics, I know that was a question that, we all needed to share why we did that. Initially, I think it takes a certain knack to deal with kids. And I've always sort of innately been really good around children. I think, that I come from a very conservative family. My mother was a full-time housewife. My father came home at 5 p.m. on the clock every night for the, nightly world news. And so I had that framework in my mind that I need to be there for my kids first and foremost. It's just how I grew up and what my mentality was. And so I thought, well, I'm good with kids. I think pediatrics will allow me sort of the lifestyle, not the high intensity call and patient responsibility. Although as medicine has been changing and evolving and women's roles in medicine have evolved so much, I think you can really, in any subspecialty, be as intense as you want, as involved as you want, as part-time as you want, as flexible as you want. And so that's what I've learned throughout my journey. My very first job out of medical school was full-time physician, actually starting up a practice for a huge subsidiary of Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. So again, that was just a loaded full-time job. I didn't have any kids at the time, and it was great to do that. But I think just, I'm sure everybody's fields are like that, but pediatrics really allowed me a lot of flexibility. I love working with kids. I mean, I even tell, my family members and others that I feel like I just played with a bunch of babies all day long, and it didn't really feel like work for me.
That's the best, right? When it doesn't feel like work, you're doing what you love.
It really is. And it's really
paid for it.
It's really rewarding. I get to watch little people grow right before my eyes. And it's very rewarding for me. I really love it.
So we just had a bolus of questions here. Okay, this is, I was wondering if anyone is open to letting high schoolers shadow, and if so, how can I get in touch? Very quickly, anyone allowing shadow? Okay, Dr. Rezi is? Yes.
So we at the Shifa Clinic, we do have high school students come and shadow and to get volunteer hours if they want to do that. So we do offer that a lot. And then there's a lot of, a very hands-on experience because it's a nonprofit. We can do a lot with them. We give them front office, back office experience, and any volunteers who want to, come in, shadow, learn the process. It's fantastic. And the kind of disease processes you will see at Shifa will blow your mind. It's very
Okay.
interesting. So we do offer that. There's a whole application process. So you can, I can share the contact with the details. And if you guys have any non-insured patients who are looking for healthcare, please direct them to our clinic as well. We can do a lot under one roof for them.
Okay. I think there are several of us who are allowing high schoolers to shadow. I think what we'll do is we'll try to maybe come up with a list of physicians through AMWPA that can allow shadowers. One question, I would like to know, what qualities do medical schools look for? What basis do you think your medical school took you in on? I'm going to briefly touch upon that because the UT Southwestern medical students put on a phenomenal talk. I think it's on YouTube on how to get into medical school. They really reviewed the different requirements. In a nutshell, it's really based on your MCAT score, your GPA. They want to see evidence of interest in medicine. They want to see volunteer opportunities, any research that you have, great letters of recommendation. But check out the talk by the UT Southwestern medical students. They did a phenomenal job. Another question here is, what are the differences in requirements between MD and DO? I will take that briefly because I'm a DO. In terms of, I think the question is in terms of residency. So there are MD only residencies and then there are DO only residencies. I was a DO and I knew that I wanted to do gastroenterology, which is a rather competitive subspecialty in internal medicine. So I really made sure that I did really well on the USMLE Step 1 and Step 2. I had great letters of rec. I tried to do rotations at places that I wanted to do residency in, and I think it really boils down to your scores for residency, as well as how you interview and what you can say really turns you towards your specialty of interest. Certainly, no doubt, it is more difficult for DOs to get into MD residencies. I think we all know that every year getting into any type of residency is more and more difficult. I think we can all agree upon that, just because the pool of applicants from medical schools is increasing every year, and that pool of residency spots is not increasing in that proportion.
Right.
Not to mention that you are competing against phenomenal international medical graduates from all over the world who come in with phenomenal scores and are super talented. So have to keep that in mind. The education pathway is essentially the same in DO school. We basically take the same classes as MDs, and we take an extra class in osteopathy. Okay, another question. I'm a third-year medical student. I'm really unsure of which specialty to go into. I was wondering if you have a mentoring or shadowing program. Okay, I think I touched upon that. I think if AMWPA does not have a list, then we will come up with that list because I think that's a great question. Keep in mind, all of the practices were very open to shadowing, but because of COVID, our ability to accept shadowing has markedly decreased. Is that correct? Can I speak for everyone on that?
Yes.
How difficult is it to have a medical career with a registered nurse course? Who wants to take this? I don't know. So I would have to guess. I think that's a great question. I mean, I think all of us who have gone to med school have noticed that. I think someone touched upon, you had EMTs in medical school with you. We certainly had RNs. We even had a couple of pharmacists. So I don't think it's difficult to have a medical career with a registered nurse course. Perhaps I'm not understanding. You have to go back and do your pre-medical requirements, just like everyone else does. You have to take the MCAT. There's no streamline for registered nurses into medical school. You have to take all the pre-medical requisites. I think if anything, you probably have a bit of an edge because you've been exposed to a lot of the clinical side of things. And as medical students, I really didn't get much exposure until the end of my second year of medicine. So I think you guys probably have one up on us when you already have a career and you switch to medicine. Does anyone want to add to that? I don't mean to speak for everybody.
I totally agree with you, Tasneem. I think that an RN probably has somewhat of an advantage over folks without any type of medical background to get into med school, because you already have some of the clinical stuff under your belt, and you know have a good understanding of you know clinical knowledge.
It says here, I am currently a high school student interested in medicine and looking to apply to a BSMD background. Could you share some tips on how you gained experience during high school and how you built a resume to apply to competitive programs? Ursula, do you want to take that one? Because I feel like you have kids closest in high school. You probably know more about that.
So shadowing, very high SAT scores, shadowing. If you know which specialty you're going to go to, find a physician and try to get a very good letter from them. But BSMD programs, very limited in Texas. And my daughter considered that. My daughter is now, going the 4-year and then the 4-year route. But she, again, if you want to do this, go ahead and apply and, shadow one of the physicians that's hopefully in the specialty that they're in. But those are very, very competitive programs. And I guess if you're really interested, yeah, I mean, you have to have really, really high scores.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you Google, there's a number. I mean, when I was applying to medical school, there were a number, at least 20 in the country. I mean, this was a long time ago, for the combined BSMD programs. And I think in Texas,
I think there are 2 in Texas. Yeah, there are 2 in Texas right now.
There was a UTD, UT Southwestern.
That's gone.
That's gone. There was a UT San Antonio, which is gone. There was a Texas Tech one.
Lubbock, there's one in Lubbock.
Yeah, the Texas Tech.
And there's one in Houston.
The Baylor Rice, maybe?
The
Rice Baylor, maybe?
It's with Baylor.
Yeah, so there was a combined program with Rice to Baylor College of Medicine, but yeah, I mean, you would have to Google it. I think at the end of the day, the way admissions works, having been on the admissions committee at UT Southwestern, I think medical schools get thousands of applicants, right? And so just like college, I mean, every medical school has a baseline MCAT score that they accept, correct? I think we all know this. And you have, let's say out of the 1,500 have an MCAT score of at least 33 now, I think. When I was applying, it was 30. I think now it's around 33. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then based on that, now you're sort of looking at the extracurricular activities. So now you're looking at those letters of recommendation. And you want to make sure you get letters of recommendation from your professors who know you, right? You don't want to get a letter of recommendation from someone who doesn't know you very well, someone who can write a personal letter. I can tell you that the admissions committees are very good at sort of weeding out the generic letters of recommendation that we can get off of Google and the personable letters of recommendation. I think shadowing is incredibly important. I think the best way to get a shadowing opportunity is to cold call people. Would you guys agree with that? I think AMWPA is a fantastic network to just send out an email. I think we get dozens of emails over time with questions about shadowing, and then research, trying to get involved in research would be good. We will share our emails, absolutely. Do you guys have, okay, I am 15 and majoring in business, but plan on going to medical school afterwards. Do you have any recommendations or classes I should take before then? Mashallah. Who wants to take that one? Mashallah, I'm so proud of the youth, man. This is amazing. So we had a number of people who worked in consulting and had MBAs before they came into medical school. And I think that goes back to Dr. Razi's point about, we don't get trained on the business side of medicine. And I think those people are very well equipped in terms of starting practice. But I think right now, if you're 15 and in high school, I would probably recommend, getting your feet wet with chemistry and calculus and biology and maybe human anatomy, if that's still offered in high school. And I would certainly use college as a great opportunity to explore the sciences and take more classes in them. You graduated high school already. Okay. And so in college, really try to take the pre-med courses and, start shadowing, try to volunteer at your local hospital in college. And that will give you a better understanding if you really want to be in medicine. I mean, I think I can speak for all of us. Being a physician is a huge privilege. I mean, it's, there are really long days, probably not as long as Dr. Islam's days, but really long days. And I think it's so rewarding. And I think we're all in this panel mommy doctors. So we all have kids and we have husbands, and it's a group effort. I have 2 kids. Sometimes I think I have 3 kids, but that's okay. It does take a group effort, and I love my job. I love what I do. What other questions here? We will share emails. If someone can type in all of our emails on here, that would be great. Does the AMWPA have an email newsletter I can follow? I would love to get in touch with the clinics offering shadowing opportunities. We don't have an email newsletter, but the web. I'm sorry.
That's a great idea to have a newsletter go out.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. I think the leadership is listening in on this conversation. I'm not aware that we have a newsletter. However, I do know the website is updated very frequently, and the website is actually a phenomenal place to get a sense of what we're doing, what opportunities there are. And the leadership, the board, the admins, they're very friendly. I mean, the whole purpose of AMWPA is honestly to help the next generation. We want to grow our community and grow more physicians, and we want you guys to be successful. Does finishing high school early help get into medical school because you have more time to take more courses and volunteerships? Wow, finishing high school early. Ronnie, I'll let you take that.
Well, so I was going to say it really sort of depends on you. It depends on what you want to do, on what sort of timeline. So finishing high school early is not really, is never a disadvantage, because you've sort of gotten, the more things you can get out of the way, then you're on your road to the next step. So, it just depends on, kind of, I'm going to relate this a little bit to the earlier question about, sort of tips on how to get into medical school. And Tasneem, you actually can speak to this beautifully, since you were on, in the academics committee at UT Southwestern. And my husband also, does the same stuff. He interviews, students from med school at UT Southwestern. And I'm always kind of hearing from him on the side of my ear that I think some of the things that they look for is how well-rounded you are, and not necessarily, all you want to do is just surgery, or, medicine. I mean, some of the things that I hear from some of the candidates that are coming in are things like they have patents and they've invented things, and just mind-blowing, because I don't think I would get into medical school this day and age compared to what is out there as far as competition. So if you finished high school early, use that to your advantage to try to delve into other things, whether that's research. Research is big. I think, is it Arsala and Dr. Islam and Dr. Razi can talk onto that. Doing stuff outside of just, medicine, whether that's shadowing or, having a business, background, or, having a business, or doing just really things that matter, something that is substantial, that you can put on your resume and sort of really beef it up and make it look good, and it will benefit you in the long run. It goes back to the question of the person with an RN. You have a big background to speak, with before you get into med school. So when you're young, when you've got the energy, when you have the luxury of the time, and you're not sort of running around with family or other obligations, take advantage of that time. I think you're in a great position if you've already finished high school at 15, and you can just really delve into all the other possibilities, look into other programs, other courses, other classes, some research, some shadowing, get some ideas from, folks. This is a great forum, hopefully, for you. So you've got a lot of ideas from all of our different backgrounds. But but yeah, I would just say, sky's the limit. Do whatever you can with that time and the resource.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I love that you said that, Ronnie. And I'm going to maybe offer a different spin because my parents were very conservative and very traditional. My mom was a physician. My dad was an engineer. So, in kindergarten, they were like, Tasneem, you're going to be a doctor. And I said, okay. So come on, it's true. We all, yeah. But I always tell people this. There's no hurry in education. I think there is this like desi mentality of like going through everything and in like this linear pathway. And everyone's journey is very different, and it's okay. There are now lots of high school students who are taking a gap year after high school to go volunteer somewhere and go do your research. And I think as long as you have a goal and like a 1 to 2 year plan about what your end goal is and where you want to be, I think it's okay to, take your time and become more of a well-rounded person and do things that make you happy and fulfilled. I always tell my fellows and residents this, you train once in life, right? You kind of have like one shot at residency, you have one shot at fellowship, and do what you can to make yourself as competitive as possible, but feel free to take your time and enjoy life while you're on this. I can't tell you, in medical school and residency, like how many weddings I missed, how many graduation parties I missed. And, it's a lot of sacrifices. It's completely worth it. Don't get me wrong. Completely worth it. I don't regret it at all. But I wish though that someone would have told me to my 18-year-old high school senior self that Tasneem, like, inshallah, it'll work out. Like, you're doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pray for barakat in whatever you do, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy, but don't be in such a rush, right? Like, I feel like at a point I was just ticking off boxes. And so I think it's important, especially for our youth, to keep this in mind, because I think it's so easy for all, and I'm the tiger mom that I am. I pressure my kids a lot, but I have to step back and make sure that they're enjoying life and they're enjoying what they're doing.
I'm going to throw in travel in that too.
Yes.
And whether you want to do something with that travel, I'm not just talking like be on vacation for a year. Travel, get outside of your small box, and so go see the world, experience other, ways of living, other cultures, other cities, other dynamics. And if you get an opportunity to volunteer somewhere or do a program somewhere or do a course somewhere, I can't tell you how much I learned just from a young age traveling with my family. And then even even during residency, I traveled to South Africa. I did a rotation there. I can't tell you how meaningful those experiences were, and I carry them to this day. It's who I am. It shaped who I am. So that's a big deal. Again, exactly what all this panel is telling you. Sky's the limit. Do whatever you can with your time.
Question is UT Southwestern a good medical school for Dallas residents? Absolutely. It's nationally ranked. I think Texas has a really high number of medical schools. I don't know what the last count is. I don't know if anyone knows, but I know in Fort Worth now there's 2 medical schools. TCU just opened up last year. There's one in Odessa, I believe. There's so many all over Texas. Shadowing is available to college students as well. I'm currently deciding between pursuing med school or going to physician assistant program. In terms of lifestyle, I've seen PAs have more flexibility. I would like to know how all of you wonderful doctors interact with PAs, if you do. I can start.
That.
Oh, go ahead.
I interact with PAs, so whenever you're done with that, I'll take it because I want to. Should I go ahead with this? Okay. So I actually have a PA who works with me. She is in her early 30s, and every few months she comes to me and tells me, Dr. Islam, is it too late for me to go to med school? So I'm sorry, but that's how it is. If you're a high achiever, and if you have, how sometimes we want to do things to an excellence, I think that's a trait that people have. And I think if you're humble about it, but you want to give it your very best, you'll have an excellent work-life balance. I don't think it's true that PAs have a better lifestyle than MDs or DOs. like a medical doctor. So I would highly recommend that. Just put in a little bit more years. Eventually you'll have more job satisfaction from being a doctor than a PA. That's my stance there.
I agree. I have a PA I worked with at UT for almost 9.5 years. She was excellent. She was sort of my right-hand woman. She would see my follow-ups. I think we shouldn't pick our career pathways based on what is, what's the word I'm looking for? What is more flexible or what works, what we think is going to be less hours. I think all of us have demonstrated that your job is what you make of it. And alhamdulillah, medicine is very flexible. When you become a physician, you're ready to practice. I think everyone mentioned that they picked their niches, their specialties, and their setup based on their lifestyle. And I think we all agree that we're very much pro physician-led care. And so I would say if you want to practice or perfect medicine, I hate the word practice medicine. I don't think we have practice medicine. If you want to perfect medicine, I think going into medicine would be a great career. I'm going to wrap up with this last question. Is it better to go down a clinical neuropsychologist pathway as opposed to neurologist med school path? Anyone want to take that? That's a great question.
So I can take it. I have a, I'm sorry if somebody else wanted to answer. Okay, so I'll take like 1 minute and then you can take the other minute, I guess. I know a person who actually loved research and went to, she's doing PhD in neuroscience at UTD. She is one of the most amazing young ladies I know. So I think it's really your call. She's not going to be dealing directly with patients. So if you like the human touch and the direct patient care, then go MD route. If you like the research part of it and try to advance the field of neurology, then you probably should do the research route. That's my 1 minute.
I want to thank everybody for their time. I really appreciate it. Does anyone have any closing remarks or anything? Mariam, Sada, Farani, Ursula, do you guys have anything you want to say? Thank you again.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions, they can email us. And I just wanted to add, when we're talking about when you want to pursue medicine, I just want to mention, I did have this one patient, she was 52, working in business and wanted to go to med school. And when I left, she was still my patient, had gone to med school, graduated and got into an internal medicine residency in California. So if you really put your mind to it, you can do it at any time. But of course, the sooner the better. But don't forget to stop and enjoy life, because medicine is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's going to take a lot out of you. So unless you're ready to do it, take your time. There's, like Tasneem mentioned, the Desi mentality. We all want to be doctors right at 23. And then there's a lot of things that get presented being a female. You got to have kids, you got to have family. So it's a process. So just enjoy your time. Don't rush through it. If you graduate high school at 15, fantastic, but take a breather, have fun along the way. But of course, don't waste your time, apply yourself. One more thing on the high school thing, a lot of things that I hear about, because I have a high schooler as well, is a lot of kids do a lot of high school clubs. And those clubs and those mission projects do play a role in their applications, because I have 2 nieces that got straight into med school from high school as well, doing the 6- and 7-year program at UT Southwestern and Texas Tech. So a lot of it was, mission projects, some clubs at schools, everything plays a role. Like, Dr. Siddiqui mentioned as well, you got to be an all-rounder, not just one thing, not just a score. So every little thing counts, but just have a good time because it's so fun.
Sada?
Yes, so I just want to say thank you for everyone for participating. And just to echo what everyone else was saying, that it's kind of take your opportunities of shadowing, of doing research, of extracurricular activities as you go along. I mean, just out of high school or in college, I think there's plenty of time to kind of explore different things and see what you want to do, and then work through a path to get to there, inshallah. And best of luck to everyone. Things change as you go through that path and through that journey. People change their minds, change their, what they're interested in. But inshallah, it's a process, so not to worry too early on, but just kind of see all the opportunities that you have as far as kind of learning about medicine and then going through this journey, inshallah.
Ursula and Ronnie, any closing remarks?
I'm going to just say one of the skills that, especially for our younger audience out there that I would encourage you to develop is your social skills. I think that will take you a long way along this journey. Also, hopefully getting into the right contacts and sometimes it is, I don't want to say it's about who you know, but who you know won't hurt you. What I mean by that is if you can shadow some good folks and if you can really get good letters and good references from the people that you worked with, whether it's research or a volunteer program or, any kind of extracurricular things that you've taken part in, have good people skills. Be good citizens. The better character you display, the better social skills you have, the more of a good communicator you are, an effective communicator you are, will only work to your advantage in this process. I'm sure that's true across many, many fields, but it absolutely rings true for medicine as well. So, something to really focus on as well.
I like that. Nothing else? Okay. I'm just going to end with a dua that I found pre-COVID, which I found was so useful. Allahumma afini fi badani, Allahumma afini fi sam'i, Allahumma afini fi basari, la ilaha illa anta, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufr wal-faqr wa a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr, la ilaha illa anta. Oh Allah, grant my body health. Oh Allah, grant my hearing health. Oh Allah, grant my sight health. None has the right to be worshipped except you. Oh Allah, I take refuge with you from disbelief and poverty, and I take refuge with you from the punishment of the grave. None has the right to be worshipped except you. All right, Jazakallah, everybody. Thank you so much.